March 20th, 2003, thousands of troops of the U.S.-led coalition began to pour across Kuwait's border with Iraq and head towards Baghdad. Within 20 days, they had arrived in the capital and broken Saddam Hussein's regime. The world saw the progress of Operation Iraqi Freedom as a triumph of technological might that soon overwhelmed the Iraqi forces. But there is another story of hard-fought, nasty street battles that wrought death and destruction on both sides. 152 coalition troops died during the push for Baghdad. The number of Iraqi dead is unknown, but estimates run in the thousands.
It was inch by inch, foot by foot, just like it has always been. World War II, World War I.
I thought it was going to be all like brave, like Marines or whatever. I was scared to death.
They were putting bayonets in folks.
What I've seen, people's legs and other people's laps.
It changed us all forever.
Using new footage and specially created combat graphics, this program tells of key battles that shaped the war.
Someone's going to have to argue with me pretty hard that anybody since Vietnam fighting the North Vietnamese has confronted an enemy that was this determined.
This is the story of the war's crucial turning points.
They went crazy pulling the statue down.
Beating it with the soles of their shoes, which is one of the biggest disgraces, I guess, that they can bestow upon a person.
A war fought with a ferocity, which helps explain why this is a battle that isn't over. This is the home from home of the U.S. Army's 270 Armor Battalion, a former Iraqi military compound in Abu Ghraib in western Baghdad. 270 are part of 150,000 coalition forces trying to keep the peace in Iraq.
Now we're leaving the 270 compound. We're gonna go out on our patrol, out into the wilderness, Indian country. It means that there's bad guys out there. They just keep us guessing. We could be driving down the road right now and we could be engaged by AK fire. It's just anybody's guess.
More U.S. troops have been killed in peacekeeping operations than during the combat phase of the war, many of them victims of roadside bombs.
There have been several along this road. They can be disguised as a trash bag, a Coke can. They've put some explosives in dead animal carcass because they know that we might just drive over them.
A high-risk area is the market in Abu Ghraib.
The market's pretty bad. Apparently it's one of the worst in Baghdad. We used to get a lot of thumbs-up signs from people when we drove through the market. Now we don't.
Staff Sergeant Christopher Kahunsky and the rest of 270 were part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. They crossed the Kuwaiti border on March 20th, 2003, fought their way to Baghdad, and a year later, were still there.
It's a surprise because, we initially thought that if we fought the war, that we would go home with the mission accomplished, that we would go home, the heroes, and we got the job done. President Bush landed on the aircraft carrier and he said, major ground combat's over. And everybody cheered and there were welcome home banners and job well done banners. And we're still here and we're still losing soldiers.
This is how the world saw the start of the war. Before dawn on March 20th, precision bombs began to strike regime targets in Baghdad in a campaign designed to shock and awe. For the combat troops in Kuwait, 300 miles away, it was different. Cannoneers of 111 Marines were given the order to launch the first artillery barrage into Iraq and start the ground war.
It was exhilarating. A lot of booms,
flashes of light. It was all dark, so you couldn't really see anything.
Your hands start shaking, but your mind keeps working.
It was a huge adrenaline rush, but at the same time, it was almost like it was unreal, like it wasn't happening.
United States Marines were the first to cross the border. One of their objectives was to seize oil fields in the south. They were crammed into amphibious assault vehicles known as AAVs, or tracks.
It was like riding in a sardine can. They packed us Marines in here really tight with all our gear, our ammunition. It was unbearable, but we had to suck it up. We're Marines.
All you see is tracer rounds from Patriots and everything going overhead, and you know, the whole sky's lit up like 4th of July.
The sun was just coming up, and just hearing those thunderous explosions, that's when I realized, wow, I'm going to war.
The Army followed out into the desert. 19,000 troops and some 10,000 vehicles, including the world's fastest and most powerful battle tank, the M1A1 Abrams.
I think the first road trip we actually took was 26 hours. And we rotated through, actually sleeping and commanding the tank, because it's an awful long time to drive straight through. I think the Army purposely engineers Army vehicles to be uncomfortable, because whenever you try to sleep in them, there's always a jagged edge or a pointy object in some place where your head would fit just perfectly. A lot of vibrations, a lot of getting bumped around, trying to get comfortable in a very uncomfortable environment.
The war had one aim: to take Baghdad without delay. The Army would take the desert route from Kuwait, attacking Baghdad from the southwest. Leading the way was the 3rd Infantry Division, commanded by Major General Buford Blunt.
We had identified Baghdad as the center of gravity. We knew we needed to get to Baghdad and take the regime out. And so we really didn't want to get bogged down in all the cities going up to Baghdad. That's one reason I tried to stay out to the west in the desert. There really were no large, major military forces in the cities. They were outside the cities.
The Marines would take the roads and attack Baghdad from the southeast.
And so we were there to create that dilemma for the enemy, that he was being attacked on 2 frontages, and he would have to deal with significant combat power, both coming from the southeast and coming from the south.
The coalition enjoyed overwhelming air superiority. But to win the war, their troops would need to seize ground from 200,000 Iraqi fighters, who outnumbered them by 2 to 1.
Once we went across that berm with Alpha Troop and started hearing them 50 cals go off and the tanks going off and the Bradleys going off, reality set in. Buddy, we are at war, whether you realize it or not. So you got to do whatever you got to do to get home.
During the first 2 days of the war, the British with U.S. Marines took the port of Qusar and headed north to surround Iraq's second city, Basra. U.S. Marines then bypassed Basra and approached the city of Nasiriyah. To open a southeastern route to Baghdad, they had to capture intact 2 important bridges in the city: the southern Euphrates Bridge and the northern bridge over the Saddam Canal. But on the outskirts of Nasiriyah, they discovered an army convoy which had been ambushed by enemy forces. The vehicles were in flames. Several soldiers were missing. One of them, a young private called Jessica Lynch.
At that point, I turned to the regimental commander and the battalion commander, and I said, we have to accelerate the attack. We have to find those missing soldiers, and we need to get those bridges before they're blown.
Natonski brought forward the attack on the bridges by 24 hours. Bravo Company 1-2 Marines would take the northern bridge by going round to the east to avoid an urban battle. Alpha Company would take the Euphrates Bridge, and Charlie Company would follow Bravo to the northern Canal Bridge. Intelligence foresaw no difficulty with the terrain or the Iraqis. They expected mass surrenders from the Republican Guard and inept fighting from Fedayeen troops and Ba'ath Party militias. But it would not go as planned.
The initial intelligence analysis basically said that there might be some minor resistance, but then we expected the enemy to pull out and leave the city. With respect to the terrain, we had photos, we had maps of the city. We pretty much knew what the terrain was like and what the construction of the buildings were. However, we had not factored in the fact that it had rained several days earlier.
We can now build up a picture of what happened on the Nasiriyah battlefield that day.
I remember as we were approaching the city of Al-Nasiriyah, there was a sign in English that said, "Welcome." When I saw a sign that says, "Welcome" in English, I became very suspicious.
On the morning of the 23rd of March, according to plan, Bravo took the lead, crossing the Euphrates Bridge. As soon as Bravo moved round to the east, they started to receive fire. Their heavy vehicles ran into soft, muddy ground and began to get stuck fast.
You're going to hear the cry from the crew members. "We can't move, we can't move, we're stuck, we're stuck, we can't move, we can't move."
And next thing you know, they're up, the mud's up above their, almost, at their turret.
To see one of our vehicles being immobile because of the soil sent an impulse of panic throughout the entire company.
To use an oft-used term, Murphy's Law was playing hell with us at this point. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong.
Rushed into the attack and stuck fast, the Marines now discovered that their radios would not work. They had no communications.
We had some difficulty with comm for a couple of reasons. I think for the battalion, it was really our first experience with combat, and there were a lot of people trying to talk over each other on the radio, which didn't help.
Did we get a comm check?
Alpha Company, meanwhile, followed Bravo in their AAVs. But just as they got to the Euphrates Bridge, they too were caught in a firefight.
And the next thing you know, we hear rounds just whiz past our heads coming from behind us. We could see rounds impacting on the berm like just a couple feet away from us. I mean, might sound kind of weird or sadistic, but we actually thought it was kind of funny. We just dropped down and started rolling down and just laughing about it.
It was like a game. It looked like a game, but we were in it. And it went, for us, so fast that when we looked at each other and we realized that we were moving, we've been fighting for hours.
I compare it to a dimmer switch, and the longer we were there, the dimmer switch kept getting turned up. I was very concerned that it was only a matter of time till we started taking some casualties.
Charlie Company, whose tanks were refueling after rescuing some soldiers from the Army convoy of Jessica Lynch, crossed the Euphrates. But instead of following Bravo, they went straight up what became known as Ambush Alley.
Bravo Company, unbeknownst to me at that point, was bogged down in mud and everything else that was inside the city. And basically, we were supposed to go around to the eastern side of the city to secure the northern bridge, but we ended up going straight up what they're calling Ambush Alley.
In their lightly armored tracks, Charlie ran the gauntlet of automatic fire and RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades, fired by hundreds of Iraqis seeking another victory, like the one they had scored against the Army convoy that morning.
We took heavy fire the whole way. It seemed like the further we got north, the more the fire picked up. Small arms, some machine guns, some RPG fire. Vehicles in front of the column were reporting people running across the roads, firing at the column.
I couldn't even relay to my lieutenant what was going on fast enough. It was just everything was evolving so fast. I saw numerous RPG shots at my vehicle and the vehicle behind me. I'm guessing 6 or 7 hits we took. Towards the end of Ambush Alley, we actually ran over somebody. And, like, he got caught in our tracks. It was kind of surreal. Like, to see people actually like, falling.
One of the last tracks was torn open by a rocket-propelled grenade.
Inside the track, it was chaos. I heard, you know, people donning gas masks. The whole track was filled with black smoke. We didn't know where it was coming from. People screaming. I was trying to get out to get some air because I was choking on the smoke.
People ran to the vehicle and unlocked the back doors, and people poured out. There were some significant casualties from the back, some severe leg wounds.
The initial hit from the RPG left me blind for about, I think it was an hour and a half. I couldn't see nothing. It's kind of, everything was hazy, real foggy. And what I seen, it was just, you know, people's legs and other people's laps.
Under increasingly intense fire, Charlie made it to the northern bridge and began to defend it. The drama that unfolded was captured by a photographer embedded with Charlie Company.
Knew we needed to do something, be it move or spread out or attack to the north. Try to do something to get out of the way of this, what had turned into a kill sack for the enemy's artillery.
Probably within a half an hour, we had our mortars were up firing, and one of our mortar tubes was hit directly by either an RPG or a artillery round, and we had the first Marines that were killed.
I remember Lieutenant Reed, which was one of the lieutenants I rode on my track. I remember him, you know, just coming to the back of my vehicle, you know, just bleeding from like every orifice of his face. I was like, oh God, you know. And he was like the first like person that I saw that was just like tore up.
When you start hearing all these guys screaming and moaning and, you know, yelling out, and that's when, you know, and I remember looking back and I saw Doc Robinson, you know, running around doing his thing, and they was just lining these guys up.
It made my heart jump into my throat, seeing them down there and seeing them hurt, but I gotta push that aside, do your job. I mean, there'll be time to grieve later on, feel sorry for them later on, but now it's time to act, not time to cry.
They were in bad shape. A couple of amputees, literally guys holding other guys' legs. You're taught that there's a golden hour that you can get those guys out of there, and with some of these guys, we were past that hour.
While most of Charlie stayed to secure the northern bridge, a convoy of 5 tracks sped back down Ambush Alley to evacuate the casualties. Minutes after setting off, one of the tracks was hit.
As we were going over the bridge, it was just a huge explosion. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what it was. All I know is it just rocked the whole vehicle. After that, it was all black for like about 2 minutes. I remember yelling back and telling guys to get out. At this time, I didn't know that I had lost everybody in the back.
It was just a big fireball. It was maybe 25 meters in front of us. It was body parts came out of the vehicle. There was like there was nothing left. There was no way anybody could have lived off of it.
Moments later, Sergeant Schaefer's track packed with Marines was also hit.
I felt heat coming up through the turret, and then we lost our steering. We crashed into the building. I did look over, and there was hundreds of Iraqis just running at us. And that's when I was like, everybody just get out. As soon as the track like stopped, it just all the small arms fired, concentrated on that. You could tell, I could hear the rest of the tracks going off in the distance. So I knew we were alone. We didn't know like what was going on. We didn't even actually know where we were. We were kind of disorientated.
Marines escaping the burning vehicles found themselves caught in the firestorm of Ambush Alley with no cover.
Saw a little alleyway with a pretty high wall behind it, and everybody just started piling up behind that wall. We sat there for a while and we were like, we got to get into a place with better cover. That's pretty much when we decided we got to get into these houses next to us. Doesn't matter how, just get us in there.
We just got the casualties into the house. And we figured we just hold up there until we get some help.
One of the convoy tracks, damaged in Ambush Alley, sped back to Alpha's position on the Euphrates Bridge.
And that's when a rocket-propelled grenade hit it again, and we knew automatically that there were going to be mass casualties because the way it actually jumped off the ground when it was hit and just dropped and it stopped moving.
When the ramp rolled down, just a leg rolled off of it, and that the inside was pretty much just a mesh of parts and whole people.
If the wounded were to survive, they needed to be evacuated by helicopter.
Looked at the road. There's power lines on either side of it. It's pretty tight. So directly across from the road there was an alleyway. It was still pretty narrow, but definitely enough room for the 46. So we just came in and set it down right there.
I just got goosebumps watching it. And then I got a sick feeling in my stomach, thinking that it was only a matter of seconds till they destroyed that helicopter.
The fighting had been going on for nearly 3 hours. It was most intense at Charlie's position, still isolated and trying to hold on to the northern bridge. Bravo was still stuck in the mud on the eastern side of Ambush Alley. And Alpha was under intense fire at the Euphrates Bridge.
As the day went on and the fighting up on the northern bridge started to intensify,
it's off! That was off!
There we came into a little bit of fog of war. We knew there was a big fight on, but it was very difficult to get true clarity on exactly the number of our casualties.
At the north end of Ambush Alley, Marines from Charlie were still holed up in the house, surrounded by Iraqi fighters.
We thought we were from the beginning because, like, our lieutenant wasn't there, staff sergeant wasn't there.
It's pretty much a squad mentality, pretty much. It was just like, pretty much, we have to take care of our own.
I was scared to death. Like, in the beginning, it was like, we're all confident, yeah, these guys, we're winning. As soon as you start seeing the first guys, like, get hit, it's sinking feeling, like, we might not make it. It was more scary. I wanted to go home, like, I ain't gonna lie.
I don't care. You can put the bravest guy in that situation. I think he'll break down and he'll be scared also. We experienced it, and it changed us all forever.
With no radio communications or orders from higher up, Alpha at the Euphrates Bridge decided to act.
I began to realize that the longer we sat there, probably the more dire the situation would be. Dan Whitnam is company commander for Charlie Company, and I thought, Dan's in trouble, and he needs help. I realized that the time was coming to make a decision, because I was not going to stand by idly and allow Charlie Company to get chopped up or take further casualties when I could be in a position to assist them.
Captain Brooks ordered Alpha Company to roll down Ambush Alley to help Charlie at the northern bridge. Marines from Charlie Company, still trapped inside the house, heard the approaching convoy.
Once we see them, we're waving at them, they open up fire on us because they saw we had weapons, we were waving our weapons, which is probably a stupid mistake.
Luckily, they didn't hit nobody. It was pretty, like, we got some communication by waving at them or whatever.